you don't have this same idea in security. No one would say to you, "Oh, don't worry about security. We'll just bolt it on at the end."
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Hello, and welcome to Environment Variables, brought to you by the Green Software Foundation. In each episode, we discuss the latest news and events surrounding green software. On our show, you can expect candid conversations with top experts in their field who have a passion for how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of software.
Hello, and welcome to the Waking Green Software, the show where we unpack the biggest stories shaping sustainable software and talk through what they actually mean for builders, operators, leaders, and communities. I'm Valeria. I have a background in software development. I'm a sustainability advocate. I do so many community-related things. And in fact, I'm one of the co-founders of the Green Software Italia community. And today, I'm one of the rotating hosts for the Waking Green Software. Today's episode will be about shift-left sustainability and so many more interesting topics. Basically, shift-left sustainability is trying to share about what it looks like when we treat sustainability more like something that we build and we work on in our day-to-day workflows. So we will talk about developer tooling, measurement libraries, and even policy and procurement spaces. Joining me today are two familiar faces from the Green Software Foundation ecosystems, and all of them have been guests on Environment Variables or the Waking Green Software before, and now are part of the expanded hosting lineup, and I'm super happy to have them today. Adi and Ollie.
It's great to be here, Valeria. Thanks a ton. And well, you can just call me Adi. I'm part of the engineering team at Qualcomm, where we try to build AI hardware. And I'm always very happy to talk about research in energy efficient hardware, sustainable computing, and sustainable AI. Handing over the mic to you, Ollie.
Hello, I'm Ollie. I wear many hats. One of them is I'm the one of the co-founders of Root and Branch. We're a company based in the UK, help other companies measure and do something about their environmental impact, or rather the environmental impact of their digital infrastructure. And the other hat that I usually wear is that I'm one of the co-organizers of Green Software Brighton, a community of makers and devs and designers and all sorts of wonderful digital product people looking at the sustainability of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Today, we didn't mention academia research. I remember that in our previous episodes, we were super excited about academia, but none of the articles from today is about academia. So we will have to change this. But before we dive into academia things, because we will have like a specific episode, I think that we can start with the first article of the day. And so I can help people like figure out what we are doing and we are talking about. I have to share my screen if I can do it. I'm such a boomer doing this type of stuff.
Whatever helps people get more green software. It's like at the end of the day, it's our job to share.
We've introduced the topic of today with the concept of shift-left sustainability. Like some of the people that maybe are listening to this podcast are familiar with this concept. I don't know if one of you wants to introduce the topic of shift-left sustainability.
So when we talk about shift-left, you can see right now we have these stages in the software engineering and deployment process in which we design the software, we get the requirements, then people code it up, engineer the design, build it, test it, and then you deploy it, for example, at AWS. And in this process, the most interesting thing is that we can only get the carbon emissions at the end of the process after you've deployed, after you've spent considerable amount of time testing, and then you've deployed your application. It is at that point that you would figure out what are the emissions, which is very far away from the design stage, which is why it's hard to optimize for emissions right now. So this blog by Yanis advocates for something that he calls shift-left sustainability, in which we push the measurement process to the left of the entire pipeline. So ideally, you would like to measure or estimate the emissions during design, and then you can factor them much more easily in the code process. Well, what do you think, Ollie? Where would you love to place this idea?
As early as possible.
Yes, as early as possible. Ideally, we don't even need to think about it. It just comes naturally. Yeah.
I mean, there's this this principle always reminds me of something. I think it was Donald Knuth. I don't know. No, it's
Don.
Yeah. The premature optimization is the root of all evil. And I think I understand what he was getting at when he said that. I think it's overused, and because if you spent any time trying to optimize software, you run into this exact problem.
Exactly.
Where
100% I agree. Yes.
By the time you get to the end of the process, all of your opportunity to actually optimize has already been taken away from you because of decisions that you made very early on. And you don't have this same idea in security. No one would say to you, "Oh, don't worry about security. We'll just bolt it on at the end."
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah. So I understand what the idea of this, premature optimization being the root of all evil.
Yeah.
It can, in certain contexts, be really, really bad. But if your goal is to optimize software, then think about it as early as possible. And in this case, if your goal is to make sustainable green software, you have to think about it right at the beginning. So as early as possible.
I completely agree. I think this is a fascinating example you give that no one bolts on security. Security is by design. Performance is an afterthought, or sustainability is an afterthought. I think it would be great if we can just change that thought process. Well, I don't know what you think about this, Valeria.
I 100% agree with what you were saying. I wanted to share a slightly different perspective because I think that all three of us, we have already the mindset that sustainability and talking about sustainability related to software is something that we have to do. But most companies don't have this mindset. And the situations that I usually see are, I don't know if you are familiar with all the problems and the topic related to accessibility. I see so many parallelism between sustainability and accessibility because until last year, accessibility wasn't something mandatory. Companies maybe developed accessible software or accessible websites, but they didn't have to. And for sustainability, the situation is exactly this one. Companies don't have to write sustainable software. It would be great if they do that, but they don't have to. And so I think that there's a gap between companies that are already with this mindset. We have to think about sustainability in the very first moment. If these companies that are already with the mindset of sustainability is important, they don't actually need to talk about sustainability specifically, because sustainability is inside the process already. And then there are all the other companies that they are oh, okay, we can do something related to our software and write green software, but how can we do that? And they think about sustainability at the end of the process. So sustainability becomes the last task.
Yep.
And everything becomes more and more difficult if they approach sustainability this way. I don't know if I made a clear argument. I don't know. In my mind, it was clear.
That's a great argument, Valeria, and I completely agreed.
You're definitely preaching to the converted. Yeah. I don't think any of us would disagree with this, but it is amazing how really important things are left right until the end. Optimization, security are often pushed right to the end, and you end up with pretty nasty software at the end of the process. The thing I love about sustainability and thinking about sustainability is that it comes with a bunch of co-benefits. You tend to produce software that's leaner, that's faster, that's lower resources. You end up with an application that's actually quite nice to use. I would say that if you're not motivated at all by the sustainability arguments for doing sustainability, then you could easily be motivated for all of the other things: the cost saving, the better product. It's kind of it's a much bigger thing than just saving emissions, although that is super important.
I completely agree with you, Ollie. I think what you're hinting at is the problem of incentives, right? That people optimize for the incentives that the system offers. And in this case, the incentive is cost. The funniest part was that last year, there was a lot of news about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive from EU. They implemented the directive and then they rolled it back. So there was supposed to be a huge change in the sustainability reporting for all companies, which would have set an incentive to do this. But unfortunately, we might have to wait a bit for that. But I completely agree with both of you that the mindset and the incentives could be better aligned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing some training with a company at the moment around this. And one of the things I like suggesting to organizations is to very early on give yourself what they call KPIs. I think is the word that everyone uses.
That's the corporate word.
That's the corporate word.
The corporate word.
Yeah. I really hate those sorts of acronyms.
Key performance indicators.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they're just challenges, right? The way I see it is just like challenges, and you can get quite creative with these. Like, it's quite hard beforehand to come up with these goals. Way back in the day, computers weren't very powerful, right?
Yep.
And so, developers were much more sensitive to what you could actually run on a computer. Yep. The idea, I think people were much more aware of how much RAM, how much disk space, how many CPU cycles they're taking up. Nowadays, it's not so much of a problem. I don't think any software developer would have any idea about how much resources their software consumes. So when you ask people to start thinking about this, often they're like, well, I don't know.
I don't know how to do it.
RAM? Yeah, like whatever. Right?
Or write this type of code, like this block of code with another algorithm that is more efficient. They're like,
there's another way.
There's another way. Yeah.
It's really difficult to start putting goals on these things. But I like to challenge them to do really sort of fun ones. Like, so do you think your software could run on a Raspberry Pi? What about the previous?
That's really great to think about.
Yeah,
it constrains your resources. That's
exactly.
Really
you constrain the resources. You say, look, if you really care about this, then let's start putting some goals in place. Right. Yeah. Let's start putting some things in place, and then it changes the way people think about it later on, because a decision will come up. Something, a requirement will change, as they always do in software, and
always do.
Okay. And something will happen and somebody will notice, hey, I can't run this on that Raspberry Pi anymore.
Yeah.
And that might seem like an arbitrary thing. It's a really easy thing to just go, oh, well, that was a stupid goal anyway. Let's just throw it in the bin. But at that point, you can have a meeting and you can say, hang on, we did decide this was going to be important.
Yep.
Right. And so before we chuck this in the bin and go, you know what, don't worry about it. If it doesn't run on that constrained hardware, it doesn't make a difference. We'll just buy more hardware.
Yeah.
It brings the conversation. It brings it into the conversation.
Exactly.
So I don't think it matters exactly what those goals are, as long as there are goals there. Yeah.
That's a great way to think about it. I really like it. I think that's a very nice starting point. We should dive more into it in another episode. But yeah,
I'll share with you one other one that gets immediate traction.
Okay. I'm very excited. I'm very excited about the other one.
That's to not think about compute resources, but instead just think about cost. So and this is the one where the managers and the the project managers things will get.
They're
on board.
like,
Yeah, you can just say, look, we're going to put a constraint in place, and we're going to set we're going to draw a line in the sand and say this piece of software is not going to cost any more than to operate, to run. Now that's it doesn't always align with sustainability goals, because you can always find ways to game the system, right? You can go, well, if we go with that provider over there, they're cheaper, right? So you can always game it that way. But the idea is to put something in place that people care about, because they care about money, and align it with something that you're trying to achieve, in this case, sustainability. So, and it's a really simple, instead of it being like, well, we're going to have to, try and fit it in a gigabyte of RAM and, all of that kind of stuff. It's much easier to just go, it's not going to cost any more than 2,000 quid a month to run. Right. That's it. That's as much as we're going for.
That's also a great point. Yes.
Yeah. So basically having budgets that you can think about, like budgets can refer to many different things. And of course, cost is like the most understandable language for everyone. So in my mind is always trying to building bridges between the way and different perspectives that we have, because sustainability is not something that you can switch on or switch off. It's not a single thing that can make your software or your website or anything like sustainable. It's basically the sum of different processes and different choices. Yeah. And so, that's super, super interesting. I think that this topic makes us super excited, but we have a couple more topics that we have to explore today. But I stopped the sharing. Let me share again my screen.
Come on, Boomer, you can do it.
Before we talked about more theoretical things, but in the previous article, there are a bunch of tools that we didn't even mention, but that's okay. We will talk about a tool that could actually be very helpful for developers, especially front-end developers. And this is basically power profiling in Chromium. We had, I don't remember how many years ago, the same tool in Firefox. And I think that we have like an image somewhere in the article, or maybe not, because it's not this one. But basically, the power profiling tells you how much power you're using to write something. And the power profiling calculates it in the browser, directly in the browser. So you can use it even when you're developing something locally. You don't have to install anything else. It's just in the browser. This was working only on Firefox, but the community wanted to expand this tool also in other browsers, because Firefox is famous, but it's not the most used browser. And so basically the community is trying to bringing the power profiling also in Chromium, which is the open source version that basically I think like runs under many more other browsers. And so it would be very, very helpful for many more people. But share your thoughts, people.
This is a fascinating topic because I looked a lot into power profiling for actual devices. And I completely agree with a lot of things that this article mentions. For example, we don't really know how to understand power for the hard disk, or how do we estimate the power for memory, DRAM, right? A very interesting data point that I love to talk about is in modern data centers, for example, if you talk about AI data centers, DRAM is a significant energy consumer. Some research papers mention that DRAM and memory consumes as much as 40 or maybe even 60% for some particular workloads, which would, if you think about it, that's almost the same as a CPU or even more than the CPU and the GPU. So the fact that we don't fully understand how to think about it and that it remains, let's say, a mystery, is just one small problem of why this is such a hard task. But I'm super glad that they tried it, because the first step to improve sustainability, the first step to improve energy consumption is to measure it. And right now we don't even understand how to measure it correctly. I'm very happy to just listen to what Ollie has to say on this.
All I was going to say is that I don't know much about this. I know about Firefox and their power profiler, and I think that's a wonderful project. It's a wonderful thing. It would be amazing if Chromium had this too. I'm gutted that this was not done.
I would love to dive deeper into this, because this is just one part. So I did a lot of research into this area for how to measure energy and carbon emissions for different levels, right? So this is at the browser, which is the application level. But you can also do this measurement in the operating system, or if you're really, really, really thorough about it, you can do it at the hardware level. And the hardware level is the most reliable, but it's also the hardest to do. How about we dive into this really deep into a future episode? I would love to just cover the state of the art and then figure out, okay, what are the gaps? Because I think when our audiences know what are the gaps, I'm pretty sure someone will come up with great solutions to fill the gaps.
Yeah. So. I can go into some of the details about how we do it in our measurement tool. It's the difficulty is apportioning energy to applications.
Exactly.
You can measure
the challenge.
Yeah, you can measure the energy. You can stick a thing in the socket if you really want to, and just measure the whole energy of the computer. But that's not
how do you
very
attribute
useful.
it?
Yes, it's the attribution that's hard.
How do you attribute it? Exactly. I think it will make for a fascinating discussion with you, Ollie and Valeria, on what is just going on with this. But I'm super glad to see that this. I did not know Chromium team tried to do this. Time to get back into this, I guess. So yeah, but let's keep going. I don't want to take up the entire episode talking about.
Yeah, no, because I'm always the person that tries to make bridges between things, between more technical and less technical things. I just wanted to share, if people will see the video, I have some things, like I tend to highlight parts of articles because my mind remembers things in this way. But this kind of tool and this kind of process was actually started in 2014 and then was stopped because of an offline discussion. So we don't actually have the reasons why this was stopped. And
sounds ominous, doesn't it? It sounds like some kind of conspiracy going on.
Yes.
There's some conspiracy going on, guys. I don't know what
yes, and I'm like, I want to know how this happened, because I work a lot with communities and open source world. And if there are people that, voluntary people that are doing things or that are submitting stuff, why would you close that? They are doing something to like make an upgrade of your tool, and you don't have to do anything aside from, oh, this is interesting. Do you need some help? And so I just wanted to like add this point to this news, because when I was reading the article in this part, I was a bit mad and a bit mad and a bit sad.
Now we have one more conspiracy theory to run with. We can come with all the conspiracy theories and how things are going wrong with the world and talk about it all day long.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I won't be stopping the sharing of my screen, because we have the last article of today. The last article of this episode is related to something that is happening in the UK. Ollie, you're from the UK, right? So maybe you're familiar with this one.
Yeah, we were there. Well, I wasn't, but my business partner, Adam, went to the summit. And Chris was there as well, from the Green Web Foundation. I'm told that it was a very, very good event. But I know that the UK government are really taking digital sustainability seriously. We've met with a few people in and around the UK government that are poking and prodding at this. So I'm hoping at some point, something really material will arrive out of all of this. But yeah, we're keeping a very close eye on it, and super exciting.
That's really great.
Yeah, it's great when governments and the institutions are interested in this type of, because in Italy, if you talk about digital sustainability and like the environmental impact of digital and technology, you're basically talking about a niche of topics. Like people don't know, actually. We don't even have university courses about this. So digital sustainability is a very new topic here. And so seeing that governments are trying to explore more this topic and be open to learn from organizations that are actually working on this it makes me happy. It's like, oh, it comforts me.
Yeah, it's been a really I'm part of the email thread, and I'm getting bombarded with emails from it. So it's very active, this discussion.
Wow.
And I know that I was, where was I? I think it was at Green I.O. Someone from, I think it was HMRC or something like that, gave a talk on the work that the UK government's doing on digital sustainability. So I think this is, there's obviously something going on in there. There's somebody or a group of people that actually care about this. I think it's being brought to people's attention mostly because of in the news you can't read more than a few articles where you get to some data center being built that's going to consume lots of water and lots of energy, and so it's becoming much more of a thing to the general public. Public becoming much more aware about digital sustainability because of the advances of AI and because of the crazy increase in demand for data centers. So I think governments, not just in the UK, but around the world, are becoming much more sensitive to these things. It's really good.
They're very sensitive to data centers, and they're also getting sensitive to data sovereignty. Sovereignty is becoming a tricky and important discussion. Every day there's something.
Yeah, and these things are often related. Yeah,
Yeah, when I was reading the article, like specifically thinking about the UK and the government, I remember I read a news. I don't remember if it was related specifically to the UK. Like, I don't remember the country, but I remember reading an article this last summer about a government, I think it was the UK, that suggested people to like delete unuseful photos from their cloud because of a drought period of during the summer. I don't remember if it was the UK, but I think it was the UK. If I can find again the article, I was like, oh, this is super interesting. And so, yeah, like my mind connected things. Yeah. I think that for today, we shared so many things. Do you want to share anything last for this news, or do you think we are okay? If you think we are okay, we can close up with the long list of events, and I'm pretty sure I will say some words very bad with my Italian accent. I'm 100% sure about this. Yeah, I'm sorry for something that I will.
Don't apologize for having an Italian accent. Italian is a beautiful language.
If you feel Ollie can cover them. I see Ollie is organizing an event that I see in the list, so maybe Ollie would love to mention it.
Crikey. Which event is this? You'll have to remind me.
I think it's the Green Software Practitioner Study Day on March 13th at 10 a.m. GMT. Are you aware of this event?
I am aware of this event, but this is not my event. It's two people from not a problem at all, because it is very closely related to something I'm involved in. So, two of the co-organizers of the meetup that I started with my business partner, Green Software Brighton, have been. I can't get the words out, are starting or have already started a green practitioners course. So it's Fiona and Mark, who are just the most wonderful people, and they do an absolutely fantastic job of organizing our meetups and things. So if anyone wants to go and just hang out with two awesome people that know their stuff about green software, and also get the Green Software Foundation's Green Practitioner certificate at the same time, then come along, because it's awesome. And you just get to hang out with cool people.
That's what I was looking for. I'm just looking for opportunities to hang out with cool people. That's all I do.
So, why wouldn't you do that? It's cool.
Why wouldn't you do that? Exactly.
Basically hanging out with cool people, talking about cool topics, and even getting badges for like your LinkedIn profile or anywhere you want to share them.
That's great.
But this is just the first event in March that we want to share. The second one is on March 17th at 6 p.m. CET in Barcelona, and it's called What Software Doesn't Count, and digs into the carbon footprint of the hardware that runs software. We talked about hardware during this episode. I wasn't even aware of this meetup in the list. We basically had a spoiler. And this session will be in Spanish. Sorry for everyone that is English-speaking people. Next one is on March 18th, and it's Reducing Cost and Carbon at 6 p.m. CET in Hamburg. A talk on why software is one of the most overlooked levers for sustainability. Oh my, I want to go into Hamburg to listen to this.
This is a difficulty,
Hey, we're sustainable, so take the train, okay?
Oh my, coming to Hamburg from Italy in train, it was like a great adventure.
25 hours.
Yeah, basically.
But I would still take the train.
Yes, I prefer trains, but because of where I live, I sometimes cannot take trains, and I'm super sad about that.
Trains are cool. Yes.
Yeah, trains are very cool. You can study, you can listen to music, you can relax, you can do everything.
And you can stretch your legs.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Then on March 25th, we have the LUT and Sustainaries. I'm sorry if I messed up this one. At 7:15 a.m. CET, and it is a virtual event. And it's a research meets practice session with Asif Khan and Vil Nordberg. I'm so sorry, people, if I messed up your names. But the last event I know very well because it's from my community, Green Software Italia Meetup. It will be on March 30th, starting at 6:30 p.m. CET, and it will be in Milan. I'm sorry, you cannot join it online. And we have another one. I messed up the dates. This wasn't the last episode, the last event. The last event that we share is on March 26th, and it's UX Jumpstart. It will be at 2 p.m. CET, a virtual event on designing products that drive real climate actions using lean UX and planetary boundaries thinking. Oh my, I'm not a UX. I've never worked on UX things, but I'm super interested in UX topics and sustainability. So I think that we ran out of time, unfortunately, for today. And we basically shared so many interesting things, and I'm super, super happy to share these adventure with my friends Adi and Oli. And yeah, another reminder, all the resources, all the links that we shared for this episode will be in the show description. And you can also visit podcast.greensoftware.foundation to listen to more episodes of Environment Valuables and the Week in Green Software. I think that we can say goodbye and see you, everyone, in the next episode.
Thanks a lot for listening. I hope to see you guys again very soon.
Yeah, see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Just a reminder to follow Environment Variables on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please do leave a rating and review if you like what we're doing. It helps other people discover the show. And of course, we'd love to have more listeners. To find out more about the Green Software Foundation, please visit greensoftware.foundation. That's greensoftware.foundation in any browser. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode.